it's Angela from Honey for Making. Today for Nutritious Thursday, I'm sharing with you my favorite recipe for granola. My family loves it. It's gluten-free, it's low in sugar, and it's the perfect mix of crunchy and sweet and super easy to make. So, you start by getting your oats in a bowl. I measured stuff out today, so I'm not rattling a bunch of bags. Just find a gluten-free oats. I found this brand that's organic at our local Walmart, which was a win. It's a really good price point. I like to get the large flake as well as the smaller flake, and I mix them. I use predominantly large flake and then a couple cups of small flake. So for this recipe, I use 12 cups large and 3 cups small. So then we just kind of combine them in a plastic bowl. And then you're gonna want to, you can really do just about anything with granola. If you've never made it before, it's super easy to mix and match. I try to measure out my ingredients for you because I am kind of just toss-her-in kind of gal. But for today's recipe, I actually measured it out. So we like nuts in ours. You can mix all different kinds of nuts, find your favorites. Usually we'll use pecans. Today I didn't have enough, just pecans, so I've mixed pecans, walnuts, and hazelnuts. I have 2 cups of walnuts, 1 cup of pecans and hazelnuts. You just not finely chop, but roughly chop them, and you toss those in. And then I love coconut, but not everybody's a coconut lover, and I prefer the larger flakes, but for this, I don't mind the smaller ones. I find they don't or like the shredded coconut, because I find it doesn't get so, like sometimes coconut can get toasted way too far. So when I use large flakes, I always kind of throw them in later. But for the fine flaked or shredded coconut, which this is 2 cups, I'm going to start with that as well. The other thing I'm going to toss in here is wheat germ, and I use a 1/2 cup of wheat germ. All ingredients organic if you can do that. And then I take coconut oil. You're going to want a cup of coconut oil. I put it in a pan. I'm going to start melting that down, and I melt our honey with it. So I put both the coconut oil and the honey together in a pan on the stove. You use a 1/2 cup of honey, 1/2 cup of coconut oil. I have cut down my original recipe for this because I just found it was too oily and way too sweet. So I'm using half. If you are not used to natural sweeteners and you're just starting trying to healthify your diet, start slowly. Honey is actually really good for you, and when you're used to sugar, it can be a hard adjustment. So for a long time we made this with 1 cup of oil, 1 cup of honey, and then we cut it back to 3/4 cup or 3/4 cup, and then now to 1/2 cup seems to be the sweet spot for us. So I'm going to mix this up. At first I want to add my cinnamon. We like cinnamon, and we're going to add 2 teaspoons cinnamon. Again, you don't like that much of a cinnamon flavor, you can change it. I have used pumpkin spice before, and that's quite nice too. But I find the cinnamon just gives it such a good flavor. So I put cinnamon in there, and then I'm going to stir. I do have other ingredients I'm going to add later. So we like to add raisins to ours, and today we're adding some goji berries because we don't have a ton of raisins in the house. So this is about 1 cup of raisins and a little bit over 1 cup of goji berries. Again, with them, I find I prefer them cooked, and they start to get a little bit, they blow up and then they shrink down if you ever seen raisins that are baked. I like that, but my family doesn't. So I usually put these in to just kind of warm them and incorporate them in the granola for the last part of baking granola. So, you know, like the last time, I'm probably going to stir it and it's just going to go in for a little bit more to finish browning up. That's when I'll put the raisins and the goji berries in there, and that's how my family seems to like it. So you're going to mix this up so it's nice and blended. Granola is super duper easy to make, and there's so many great recipes out there. I also like to use maple syrup in place of the honey sometimes, or 1/2 and 1/2, and it makes a really nice granola as well. There is maple flavoring you can buy out there that I have added instead of the vanilla extract I'm using today. and it's quite tasty. That and your pecans, no raisins even in that case, and you can throw seeds in here too. Like sometimes if I have pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds, they're a great addition. Just cut back on some of your nuts and throw it in. You just kind of want to have it to where your granola is going to end up being wet but not runny. So as long as that's what you have, it should bake up just fine. You really do not have to worry too much when you're making granola. As long as, and I always taste it, like mix in your oil and your honey, give it a taste. If you need it sweeter, add a little bit more honey. If it's too dry, just add in a little bit extra oil. So it's really pretty easy. And I like coconut oil because it's a healthy oil for you. It's a good fat. And with cooking it at the lower temperature, it seems to still do okay. So we're just about ready. It's just starting to get a little bit of a bubble in there. I really just want to break down the last bits of the coconut. And then I'm going to pour this over the top. Before we do that, I'm going to add in some vanilla extract. I go heavy on vanilla extract. I love it. I make my own. If you want the recipe, go to Hummus for Making on the blog. You can see the recipe for making your own vanilla extract. It's super easy. It is the best tasting extract. Love it. I use it all the time. So 2 tablespoons of that is going into mine. And then we're going to mix. So see, it's super fast. I think probably the longest part of this recipe is the chopping of the nuts and then waiting for it to bake. So you want to preheat your stove. I like mine a little bit higher because I'm not the most patient person in the world. And so I set my stove at 300, but if you don't mind taking a little bit longer, a lot of people recommend 250 or 275 so that it doesn't end up burning on you. I stay pretty much on top of my granola. I watch it. And so, and again, our oil and sugar content is a little bit less than most recipes, so I find it doesn't burn either that way. So, not to say that it wouldn't if I didn't watch it, but it's not as quick to do so. So just stir it in really good. Make sure all your oats get covered with the honey and the oil. And then give it a little taste and make sure it tastes like what you want. I know what I'm missing. I like to put a pinch of salt in here as well. Got that there. That's another thing. I find that salt helps cut that sweetness, and I like to use the pink Himalayan salt. So I added 2 pinches of that. Probably about an 1/8 to a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Mix that in really well so you don't have salty bits. And then we're just going to grab cookie sheets that have either parchment paper, or if you have got these lovely silicone, I call them splat sheets. I'm not really sure where I picked up that name, but I love them. If you don't have a pair of these, you should get some, especially if you're going to cook gluten-free or just any baking. I love these sheets. So you just put them on there, just like you would. The parchment paper works too. Don't use wax paper. You'll be putting wax into your food. Spread that out. This should make 2 pans. Just like that. And then you'll stick it into the oven. I started at 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, I'm going to give it a stir. And then I rotate the racks because the top one on my stove anyways always cooks faster than the lower one. And give them both a stir, set it for another 20 minutes. Stir them again, rotate them. If they're brown enough at that point, I will add the goji berries and raisins. If not, I give it one more 20-minute go. Then by usually the 3rd cycle, it's ready to add the raisins and goji berries. I put them in from anywhere from 10 to 20 more minutes. And then I bring it all out, let it cool, and add in the chia seeds. So that's the recipe. I'll be back in a minute once these are all finished. Okay, so the granola is out of the oven. It's nice and lightly browned. You can see this. When you move your granola around, it shouldn't be like stark white underneath. Then you know it's all nicely baked. You've moved it around enough times. And this is where I add our dried fruit. Whether it's apricots or goji berries, raisins, any of that I add at this step, and then I will pop them in the oven one more time for about 10 minutes. That's how my family likes them. If it was for me, I'd be mixing them in right away. I like my raisins nice and baked. They get nice and puffy and just crunchy. I prefer it that way, but my family doesn't, so this is how I do it for them. And honestly, you don't have to worry about your teeth as much this way either. Or sometimes the raisins, and I like the big, nice raisins. They're delicious. They're my favorite. You don't have to worry about your teeth when you do it this way. Where sometimes the other ones, when they're baked, they get pretty hard. So I just mix them in really well. Kind of try and cover them a little bit so they don't burn at this point. Everything's pretty much done. So I'm just going to warm them up in the oven a bit, and then the last step will be to add the chia seeds. Okay, so the granola is done. The fruit is lightly puffy, just how my family likes it. And then I basically pick up the sheets, make sure they're cooled off, and I just pour them into a bowl. And then I'm going to add the chia seeds to this, mix it really well, and then transfer these to, I'm not going to do that, that's going to make a mess if I'm doing it on the screen, but I transfer them to a container such as, let me show you. Such as this, have a lid on it. It should fill 2 of these, and you can even do a big glass jar or a glass container, and it will sit for a long time until everybody eats it up. It stores really well. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Thank you for joining me today. Again, you can find this recipe up on the blog real soon, and lots of other recipes there. Until next time, this has been Angela from Home is for Making for Nutritious Food. Bye for now.